Come to Rochambeau.
Ouais.
Bienvenue en Amérique.
Merci, chef.
In 1780, the French landed right here in Newport, Rhode Island, to assist the Americans in their fight for independence. We are making a duck cassoulet with potatoes and root vegetable, and a braised pork belly with cabbage and potato, just like they would have had it during this great long march. For our French alliance, for a taste of history, à votre santé.
À votre santé!
Wow, spectacular. You must remember, when the French and the American forces were on a march, after 12 miles, they needed a hearty meal, exactly what I'm doing today. I'm sure this dish, especially my cassoulet, would make them feel at home. The first step in making a cassoulet is the actual beans. Without beans, you don't have no cassoulet. And the beans we're using are the cannelloni beans or white northern beans that are raw, like that, but you must soak them overnight in water. If you don't have the beans soaked, you can still cook them, but it's almost impossible, they burn. So I have a duck in front of me, but any protein works as well. There's vegetable protein in the beans already. So the first thing I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna bone the duck. One piece, I'm gonna take the wing. Second piece, take half the breast. Beautiful duck breast. We're gonna cut that. This is also a big delicacy in France. Might get a canard, which is just a duck breast, one of Thomas Jefferson's favorite. Leave the fat on it. Take one more piece here. Now you want to salt it really good. Put in amount of salt because there's no salt on the beans either, and pepper. So I have a dashi behind me, because what I want to do is I want to get the fat to be rendered quickly for the flavor. So I have the dashi really getting hot. I got the schmaltz here. Duck fat is a distinct flavor, almost like a goose fat. What a flavor. Now I want to really, really brown it good. A lot of calories because those soldiers needed it, obviously. High heat. All right, it's browning nicely. I'm gonna come over here and cut some of the slab bacon over here. I got some already cut, but I want to get another piece in there. So here I go. It's already pre-cut. Add them right into it. I left the skin on it because this what gives the flavor. So I'm adding that to the duck. And good eating. Next I have onions and garlic. Look at that, perfect. Oh yeah. Now I'm gonna deglaze it a little bit with just chicken stock or duck stock, any stock you want. I gotta just stir this a couple times. It's got to, oh gosh, smell that. That's beautiful. And duck, bacon, garlic, onion, don't get better than that. Well, the duck is simmering away slowly. It will take about 30 minutes or so. I'm getting ready to cut up some root vegetable for the beans. I'm just gonna cut the vegetable coarse. Again, root vegetable that would have been wintered extremely well, and just cut in a big chunk because they're gonna disintegrate and cook with the beans anyway. So here, like so. That's just for flavor. I wouldn't have had that, but it's good flavor in there. All right, get some schmaltz in my hand. So the root vegetable just need to sweat a little bit. And now comes the important part. This is the white beans that makes the cassoulet. So the beans have been soaked overnight, very important. Adding them in right now, add them stock and let it cook. And then later, when the meat is like 80% done, then you marry the beans together with the meat. So here we go. And that's all the beans we need for this recipe. I have some potato cut, which again you will not find in most cassoulet recipes, but we're not cooking classical cassoulet, we're cooking cassoulet for Rochambeaus Army on the way down to Yorktown. We found out they wanted to stretch it. Potato would be a natural stretcher. Stretcher meaning making the recipe last longer. And now we're just going to add stock. So I have a nice duck stock. We took a couple of the ducks earlier. So this can simmer on its own. Oh God. Oh man. Isn't it beautiful, the flavor? See how it cooks nice in there? So we got to give that at least another 10-15 minutes. And then we're going to marry the beans. Perfect. Perfectly cooked. Now I'm going to add them in here. And then I'm going to lid it and sit right next to the fire. Oh, the flavor. I need nothing to worry about salt and pepper because I have so much seasoning on the duck before. So now I'm going to add some chopped parsley on it. Good amount. Cooks right into it. It's a little flavor. It's a little color into it. And now comes the beauty by cooking on an open heart. And that's why I like so much the 18th century. Because now I'm going to lit this cassoulet, set it next to the fire, and because the metal attracts the heat, it keeps on simmering. So when I'm finished with the next course, we then serve up both of the dishes. So I'm ready to go. I take this one off. This one goes down. And notice that I'm having it close to the fire, and it just boils away. Now I've got a lid. The Revolutionary War was just not a conflict between the colonists and the British. Other countries played a major role in it as well, especially the French.
The colonists started this war without money, without arms, without equipment, without anything. There is only one country where this support can come from, and that is France.
Within the first few years of the Revolutionary War, the American forces were reeling. However, despite being pushed out of their capital city of Philadelphia, General George Washington's Continental Army kept on fighting.
They're showing their resilience. They show that they are not fighting by European rules of warfare, where the war is won once the capital is occupied. If the British cannot defeat the Americans, this rebellion definitely has a possibility to succeed.
France, inspired by the tenacity of the Americans, saw the potential of crippling Britain, their longtime global adversary. While the French had provided arms and supplies to the Americans throughout the war, they would fully commit in 1780 by sending extensive ground forces. Under the guidance of the esteemed French general Rochambeau, over 5,000 men arrived on the shores of Newport, Rhode Island. From here, the Franco-American alliance would take on a whole new meaning. The French army remained quartered in Newport for an entire year before eventually embarking on a march that would amount to upwards of 700 miles. Along the way, these battle-practiced troops would meet Washington and his 4,000 men outside of British-held New York City, which was the preferred target for their joint attack.
French Admiral de Grasse really forces Washington's and Rochambeau's hands when he writes to them that he will sail to the Chesapeake with the Navy and it will be available for a joint land-sea operation if Washington and Rochambeau can get their forces to Virginia, to the Chesapeake. And Washington says, yes, we have to go where the Navy is.
Over the course of a month, they marched through 6 more states in the fall of 1781. Striking the British in Virginia was the opportunity that the Franco-American forces were waiting for. The Battle of Yorktown would result in the surrender of the British General Cornwallis and proved to be the last significant land battle of the American Revolution, effectively ending the war. Some people in the colonies honored the French by naming their children after General Rochambeau and Queen Marie Antoinette, a remarkable symbol of how far Franco-American relations had come. It was also France's recognition of American independence that provided the colonies with a sense of global legitimacy.
You can exist in your own conviction as a nation, but if nobody else recognizes you as such, you might as well not exist. It is with the help of France Not only that the United States gained their independence, but is also acknowledged as a player on the international stage.
My cassoulet of duck is cooking away nicely behind there. Notice, not under fire, off the fire, because the wrought iron attracts the heat. The second recipe I'm making, a braised pork belly with cabbage and potato. So what you see in front of me here is the slab that later becomes bacon. I wanted to show you what it looks like, and also the piece I prefer are the pieces right from here. This one is closer to the shoulder, which has more meat, less fat. The closer you go down to the end, the more fatty it gets. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 3 chunks off there. Remember, leave the skin on. The skin is what gives the unique flavor. And you can see, just by looking at it, the amount of meat goes through it. It's beautiful marbled. Good amount of salt, both sides. All right, pepper. Behind me is a duchy that is beyond hot. So we're going to sear it on both sides really good. Nothing in the pan at all, you saw it, just salt and pepper. So we're going to let them cooking for at least about 10-15 minutes on both sides. Now, braising a pork belly is not as simple as it looks. Why? Because it takes a long time. Right now I'm going to try to render the fat and get caramelization going on, and then afterwards I'm going to put a lid on it, let it stick by the fire, and you can take about an hour to an hour and a half because you want to cook it very slow. So now we're going to move it back one more time. Oh, perfect. I'm going to lid it now. And let it sit right here. I met up with my good friend, Dr. Robert Selig, to find out more about his unbelievable journey towards independence.
Yeah, Chef, we talked a lot about the march to Yorktown down the American Eastern Seashore, but let's not forget that French forces actually landed here in Newport and spent the whole winter until June of 1781. This tavern here was 100 years old by the time French forces got here. Certainly some of the officers would have come here ever so often to get away from the work routine.
So we assume that Rochambeau would have been here a few times having a pint. Would you agree?
I would agree, or maybe a glass of wine.
So, Doctor, for many of the residents of Newport, it was the first time that they interacted with a foreigner, like a French soldier.
You're absolutely correct. French are not a common sight in New England. If ever, most New Englanders had seen a Frenchman on the other end of a musket barrel. Let's not forget the French and Indian War. They're the traditional enemy. So it's understandable that initially there was some apprehension. After the first couple days and weeks here, this animosity is really dissolved. There's nothing better than personal contact to overcome prejudices, misconceptions.
So it was a positive experience.
Most certainly. Plus, most New Englanders, or Americans for that matter, remember is that French forces have money. The Continental Army marches down the East Coast with IOUs. The French forces march down with silver. Here's a English shilling. Here is a French coin, and just like a modern-day credit card, it doesn't really matter whether you charge in livre or in pieces of 8, whatever, it's silver, it has an intrinsic value.
One of those would let you buy drinks for your entire battalion.
Well, maybe not for the whole battalion, but certainly for your buddies, for your squad 6, 7, 8 people, if you want to go out and have your birthday party. For a historian, actually it's better if they pay with paper, because the paper trail is there. We know exactly where the Continental Army went.
I thank you very much for a very, very fantastic insight.
My pleasure. Santé.
So now I'm making the accompaniment with the pork braised belly, which is basically nothing more than a braised cabbage with some potatoes in it. Again, cooked with schmaltz, onions, and garlic. I'm taking, this is a Savoy cabbage, the big one. That is my friend Thomas Jefferson's favorite. I just took out the core because it'd be way too hard. Many of the places nowadays that are serving the belly serve it actually with modern accompaniments, like green beans, mashed potato, all kind of stuff. Everybody has a one way or another. Just happen to like the old traditional way of that. So I remember when cooking cabbage, you know, it's mostly water, like all vegetables are 85% water. So you need to anticipate a good amount if you want to feed a bunch of people. This should do it actually. Now I'm gonna take some onions first. I got a bunch of potatoes over here. And the potato, what I'm gonna do for that, I like sometimes Irish white, Yukons, any potato would work. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is any like baking potato. So I got a Dutchie getting super hot because I wanna get this cabbage a really strong blanch to it. So I have some schmaltz. I'm looking for a little bit of this burned effect to give me this flavor of braising. That's why you have the really hot pan when you want to make that. Onion, potato, garlic goes right in. That's what I'm looking for. So about 5 minutes or so. I love when the plan comes together. It's just perfect. And the flavor, let it sit for a little bit. So the braised cabbage with some potatoes, garlic, and onion is ready. It's absolutely just the way I envisioned it. I'm gonna bring it over to the blending. I'm gonna taste for salt and pepper. I'm gonna start laying it out. Then I get the pork that is finished, slice it, serve it on top. Next is the cassoulet. And Mr. Rochambeau will never be the same again. Salt, a little white pepper, and a little bit of black pepper. Potato is so beautiful, look at this. It's a picture of art. This alone could have been a meal, but obviously today we have the beautiful braised pork bellies that I'm going to get right now. Pork belly, here I come. Look at that. The flavor of that pork belly coming right through here is like, chives are good because it's onion flavor. So let me taste a little bit of my unbelievable pork belly. I know why pork belly is so popular right now throughout the whole country. It's been popular with me all my life, but this is absolutely spectacular. All right. Oh, let's check on this cassoulet. Oh, look at that. Caramelizing the duck early on is what gives this unique color. There's no tomatoes in there, nothing in there. The color is just from the caramelization of the duck meat in there. Parsley on top. And I'll take a spoon and try it. Boy, I tell you, if the French troops had food like that, it's no surprise to me that we won the revolution. 1781 would have not happened without Rochambeau and without great food like that. Having operated the city tavern for the last 24 years, I show a deep appreciation for history. I'm curious to see what the Newport Historical Society has in store for me.
Newport today is probably the best preserved colonial American city. It has very much a European flair. Most of the houses where French superior officers, generals were housed are still standing and are still the original buildings. For any kind of interpretation, Newport would be my choice for recreating the atmosphere of the 18th century.
Welcome to the Newport Historical Society.
It's a brilliant collection you got here. I appreciate when you have organizations like yourself that maintain our connection to the past.
It's a pleasure to show you some of our objects from the American Revolution. We have a short sword that was the property of Major Daniel Lyman. He was in the Continental Army. This sword was given to him by the Marquis de Lafayette.
It looks so beautiful.
The blade was made in Germany.
It's got to be good then.
Yes, yes, absolutely. There's allegedly only one other sword of this caliber in America.
Very nice. I know what I'm looking at right in front of me. It's the most gorgeous little teapot I've ever seen.
This is a camp tea kettle that was given to the Robinson family by the Viscount de Noailles. They stayed during the occupation.
When you say they stayed, not everybody stayed, right?
No, half the population left.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So the Robinsons stayed in their house. Somebody knocked on the door and presented them with this document. This is a quartering order. The quartering master of Newport informed the Robinsons that they are about to have a French nobleman and his entire entourage and staff stay in their house for the French time in Newport.
You couldn't dispute it.
No, no. So as a token of appreciation, he sends them this camp kettle.
I'm glad I wasn't living here when somebody would come and said, I have to take 10 people into my house. I have Diana with me, my pastry chef from the City Tavern, and I know that biscuits can be made really quickly on an open pan and an open fire as long as you have a lid for it. So Diana, I need your help, you know?
I'm here for you. I'm ready to go.
Thank you, because you know what? This always been intriguing me for a long time, because people always debating with me what people would have served. And you know, to bake bread, you need a beehive. To make biscuits, you don't need a beehive.
You're right. So we're gonna start with 2 different kinds of flour. One is bread, one is pastry, along with some baking powder, just a skosh of sugar to aid in the browning, and a good handful of salt. Stir that up.
Diana, why do people always talk about buttermilk biscuit? Why? What's different between buttermilk and whole milk?
Well, fat-free, first of all. Also, it's got a nice bitter flavor to it, and the acidic level of buttermilk really aids in the rising of the biscuit. So, before we get to the buttermilk though, we're gonna get our nice cold butter here, as cold as you can get it. Maybe not so cold on the battlefield, but that's okay. And I'm just gonna start mushing it up with my fingers until it's nice and combine it.
Diana, you know that in the 18th century warfare was much different than ours that we were made to. The family came along. This would have been something done by the wife of one of the soldiers behind the actual battlefield or close to it.
So if you would slowly add some of that buttermilk in here. You can add about half at first.
All right, there you go.
Beautiful. You don't want to make it too wet.
So the trick to making a good biscuit is all the ingredients cold, right? Butter cold,
it definitely
buttermilk cold.
helps. It definitely helps, especially the butter. Liberally flour the table. Handful here.
And just pat them down.
Cut them out. Stack them up. Move them over. They can be pretty close in there.
So Diana, how much time do you think they take on a very low fire? It's actually on the edge of the fire that you cook them, because too much heat, they would burn right away.
Yes, you're right about that.
What do you think, about 8 minutes max?
Yeah,
If that.
10 minutes sounds about right to me.
This time I'm going to serve you one first.
Okay.
Cranberry on top of that, look at that. You take
my
a bite
goodness.
first.
Oh, the biggest bite
And
of all
I
time.
take the second bite.
That is fantastic. It's beautiful. The
Oh.
nice, crisp, buttery biscuit next to that sharp cranberry preserve. Absolutely phenomenal.
Jacques Staib?
Dr. Selig, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited because after all, that's where it began, right?
This is where all began in July of 1780, yes, when the Comte de Rochambeau landed his 5,000 troops right down the beach here.
As a chef, I'm still intrigued how they were able to feed 5,000 men under march all the way down.
It was indeed a challenge that began the moment they landed here in Newport. If you keep in mind that Newport had about 5,000 inhabitants only, and Rochambeau's army is the same strength, feeding these multitudes of troops as they're marching through is a great challenge.
Allez-y!
Soldats, il est temps de manger, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, il faut manger. Soldats, c'est temps à manger. Alors, allez. Let me get the knife, I'll cut you some bread. There you go, he was waiting for the pickle. Eat, eat, eat.